This episode of Robservations was sponsored by The John Campea Show. Find The John Campea Show wherever you get your audio podcasts. Thanks for the sponsorship, John. Much appreciated. Greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, Robert Meyer Burnett. I invite you to watch and listen to the Designing Hollywood podcast, brought to you by Martika Ibarra and the great, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance. I am afforded the wonderful opportunity of co-hosting the show. If you are interested in the magic of Hollywood, the design of Hollywood, the clothes of Hollywood, watch the Designing Hollywood podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts from, or find the video version on the John Campea YouTube channel. That's right, the Designing Hollywood podcast. Why would you ever want to miss it, especially if you love the movies?
Hey, my name is King, or as some of you might know me better, Israel. I've gotten around, but hopefully you recognize me from my own channel, King Tannic. There's a new show coming to the Burnettwork that I think is pretty exciting. Welcome to the Otaku Experience, hosted by yours truly. There is going to be a weekly series where we dive into the news and the world of anime, manga, and whatever the heck else Japan has to offer us. The show will be pre-recorded and premiere on Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific Time or 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Burnettwork YouTube channel.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and the as yet undefined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett, and I am robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations, episode number 858. My God. Now, I want to start this show, not on the main topic, but I just wanted to start the show with something cool. So, I was contacted by a representative from Upper Deck, the trading card company. Now, I was never a trading card guy. I didn't collect sports trading cards. I collected movie trading cards, but I knew Upper Deck. They're like the Mercedes or the Lamborghini of sports card collecting. What I didn't know is they branched out into other things. They make like movie trading cards, TV trading cards with like WandaVision, Marvel trading cards, that kind of thing, which I thought was pretty cool. So they reached out to me and they said, would you take a look at a gallery print that we're making? And who am I to say no? I used to be called Kiss Ass Rob. My friends would be like, whenever you meet somebody, who's famous, you're always so effusive with your praise. And I'm like, oh, contraire. It's not just any famous person. I don't care if people are famous. If I love their work, then I'll kiss their ass. But it's not to get anything. It's just to tell them that I'm very effusive with my praise. And if I was trying to blow smoke up their ass, they'd know. My kissing of the asses is genuine. So Upper Deck they just said, no obligation. We just want to send you something. We want you to look at it. And of course, they knew how to butter me up. So they sent me this. I've shown this before on the show. This is one of their gallery prints of, one of my favorite Marvel characters, Moon Knight. This is a limited edition print. They only made 250 of them. And this is by E.M. Gist. And it's awesome. And it comes with a thing of authenticity. And they come incredibly well packed. Nothing is going to happen to these if you decide to get one, which I think you should. So anyway, they contacted me again. And they said, listen, we want to send you something else to look at. And if you like it, would you talk about it? Well, so they're in the middle of their 10th anniversary of, well, let me read what I don't want to get this wrong. Not only is Upper Deck known for being at the forefront of the cutting-edge technology in the trading card industry, but they also bring that same dedication to their Marvel gallery prints. And this is the latest addition to that gallery, a pair of prints celebrating the 10th anniversary of the legendary A Marvel Deck building game. Now, I got to tell you, I don't know anything about the game. The 18 by 24 print is illustrated by prominent artist Todd Knock, known in the comic book industry for his work on Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, X-Men Legends, American Dream, and much more. So this is one of the two. That's the Heroes print. And here is the Villains print, which I really thought was cool. The prints are part of Upper Deck's 10th anniversary celebration of legendary Marvel Deck building game. And in the game, you recruit hundreds of Marvel characters as they fend off masterminds, villains, and their nefarious schemes. The limited print runs on these feature a regular edition print numbered to 250, starring some of the characters from the game's original core set, which includes your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, Weapon X himself Wolverine, Thor the God of Thunder, and more as they prepare for an epic showdown. The variant edition, which is numbered to 100, that's this one, features villains and masterminds from the game that fans have no doubt faced off against. The high-quality gallery print is perfect for any Marvel fan's home, display room, or office, and is on sale now at the Upper Deck store online. So, yeah, they sent me that to read if I like the print. Now, check this out. I am willing to be Kiss-Ass Rob because here is that hero print, and this is going to go right up above my Maji cases with my Hot Toys figures, although it does make me long for a Rogue and a Storm, doesn't it? Great Wolverine, though. These are badass. They're really nice. They're really well done. So kudos to Upper Deck, and I am proud to kiss your ass and shill for you because they are awesome. I put a link down in the description for all of that stuff. It'll take you to the gallery. They're just cool. And you know what? I want to thank Upper Deck for sending them to me. I didn't even know I was getting that Moon Knight one. And then I was told that they sent me another one just because. And they asked me if I liked it, could I read it on the show? Hell yes, Upper Deck. Thank you, guys. You do have that Mr. Knight print, too. You didn't send me that one, and if you had a few lying around. I'm just saying. But they're pretty cool. Anyway, now to get to the task at hand. Now, I could talk about Star Wars and Marvel and all that, but I also love the entertainment business, and something very interesting. If you're listening to NPR today, you heard about this. I didn't know anything about this, but it is fascinating. So let me give you a little bit of a background, and as I go through this, it might be a little redundant, but I have to set the stage. Let's go back to 1981. Prince Rogers Nelson, my man Prince, my favorite rock and roller of all time. I honestly believe he's also the greatest rock guitarist who ever lived. I know. Everyone's throwing out Jimmy Page, Eddie Van Halen. Of course, I do have Hendrix and Prince on the same shelf for my 6-scale supergroup. Just saying. I get it. I know. But Prince, by the way, Prince Michael Jackson, come on, man. Michael Jackson was a great performer. He never played instruments. And Prince, I'm sorry, smoked MJ any day of the week. Just saying. I understand Michael Jackson got Hot Toys figures and Prince didn't. Prince is getting a figure. So in 1981, Prince was he was a newcomer to the scene. He'd done albums like Prince for You, Prince, Dirty Mind, Controversy, his early works. 1999 came out in 82. Purple Rain came out in 84. So in 81, Prince I think he was still getting booed when he was touring with the Rolling Stones, which is unfortunate, but it happened. So it was Newsweek that sent a rock and roll photographer named Lynn Goldsmith around to get a photograph of Prince for their magazine, for Newsweek, for a cover, not a cover story, but it's just a story on Prince. So she took a number of photographs, and then Vanity Fair wanted to also do a profile on Prince. So what they did was they hired Andy Warhol. Yeah, that Andy Warhol, the famous pop artist, the man responsible for Flesh for Frankenstein. Come on. Andy Warhol, who Crispin Glover played him in Oliver Stone's The Doors. That Andy Warhol. So Andy Warhol was commissioned by Vanity Fair to do artwork of Prince. And what he did was he made a painting using the photograph that Lynn Goldsmith took. And here is the photograph, and here is Andy Warhol's impression of that photograph. The expression on his face is a little different. Than Andy Warhol also did a series. I think there was 15 in all. A series of, so those are what Warhol had done, and that's the original photograph that was taken in 1981. So Andy Warhol's work, and that's the original by photographer Lynn Goldsmith. It happens. Cut to the aughts, and then the teens, the 20 teens. And there was a little bit of a snafu, and let me read what happened so you can get some background here of what I'm getting into. So here's an article, and this comes from Revolver. They are your Andy Warhol specialists. I didn't even know Revolver existed, but you know me, looking to jump in and do the research. So, Prince paintings, the Andy Warhol Foundation copyright battle. Ooh, this is a good one. Andy Warhol's Prince illustration, based on the Lynn Goldsmith photographs as it appeared in Vanity Fair, here reproduced in court documents. Andy Warhol is venerated for his pop art, particularly his vibrant depictions of iconic celebrities. However, his reproduction of other photographs of other photographers' images has always been a topic of great contest for the artist. Though Warhol died over 30 years ago, the Andy Warhol Foundation continues to battle for image rights. In 2017, the Andy Warhol Foundation launched a preemptive lawsuit against photographer Lynn Goldsmith, who captured photos of the late musician Prince in 1981 for Newsweek. Though Goldsmith's photographs were never published, Andy Warhol was commissioned, I guess Newsweek never published them. Though Goldsmith's photographs were never published, Andy Warhol was commissioned by Vanity Fair in 1984 to produce a pop art recreation of one of the images, after licensing it for $400, meaning that Vanity Fair paid $400 to Lynn Goldsmith for her photograph to use as the basis for the Warhol painting. Warhol continued to use the image for his portfolio of Prince paintings, taking his own spin on the vulnerable black and white photo of the artist. Though Warhol's reproductions became an iconic part of his portfolio, Goldsmith alleges that she had not known about Warhol's reproduction of her photograph until it was published in a 2016 Vanity Fair article following Prince's death. Though Goldsmith did not, so even though he did this in 84, the photograph was published in a new Vanity Fair article following Prince's death in 2016. Though Goldsmith did not initially intend to seek legal action, she filed a countersuit after the peremptory challenge from the foundation, stating, "I know that some people think I started this, and I'm trying to make money. That's ridiculous. The Andy Warhol Foundation sued me first for my own copyrighted photograph. However, rather than having a standard trial, the parties requested a summary judgment in which the judge makes a unilateral ruling on a case based on statements from the defense and the prosecution. John G. Codall, the presiding New York State District Judge for the case, ruled in favor of the Andy Warhol Foundation. Codall argued that though Warhol used Goldsmith's photograph as a reference image, he removed nearly all of the photograph's protectable elements. Thus, Warhol did not violate the photograph's copyright. Now, I will leave this up so you can tell me what you think. So that's the original photograph, and then that's what Warhol did with it. Now, Warhol did not violate the photograph's copyright. Codal explained his judgment through the perceived transformation of the image from Goldsmith to Warhol. The Prince series works can be reasonably perceived to have transformed Prince from a vulnerable, uncomfortable person to an iconic, larger-than-life figure. The humanity Prince embodies in Goldsmith's photograph is gone. Moreover, each Prince series work is immediately recognizable as a Warhol rather than as a photograph of Prince. There you go. In the same way that Warhol's famous representations of Marilyn Monroe and Mao Zedong are recognizable as Warhols, not as realistic photographs of those persons. Judge Codal's ruling also reflects Vanity Fair's lawful use of the image. Goldsmith recalls the magazine requesting to license the photo for an artist to reference to create an illustration, for which they provided both payment and photo credit. However, Goldsmith still believes that Andy Warhol himself violated her copyright by continuing reproductions through his Prince portfolio. So, is that true or not? I don't know. Warhol was known to use popular images for the sources of his paintings, for which he found himself in several settlement deals out of court. Such settlements included the image for his Flowers series, which was taken from Patricia Caulfield, his Jacqueline Kennedy images, originally from Fred Ward, and Warhol's Birmingham Race Riot, which was sourced from civil rights photographer Charles Moore. After the recurring disputes, Warhol vowed to start using his own photographs to use for the basis of his works, such as those he took of Mick Jagger and Muhammad Ali. However, Warhol made an exception to the rule after Vanity Fair's license of Goldsmith's photo. Despite the judge ruling in favor of the foundation, Goldsmith stated that she plans to pursue an appeal, which will be submitted to an appellate court for definitive ruling. Goldsmith's lawyers commented on the results of the case in an email. Obviously, we and our client are disappointed with the fair use finding, which continues the gradual erosion of photographers' rights in favor of famous artists who have fixed their names to what would otherwise be derivative work of the photographer and claim fair use by making cosmetic changes. Lawyer Barry Werbin writes, hoping that an appeal will be successful and pull in the reins of transformative use where photography is concerned. So that's pretty interesting. The Warhol Foundation prevailed. Andy Warhol, because he's Andy Warhol, probably won for that reason. And Lynn Goldsmith, being who she is, didn't have the power. What I find really interesting about this is clearly, let's go back to this, you see on the left, you see Lynn Goldsmith's photograph of Prince, and you see what Andy Warhol did to it. Now, I wasn't actually a plaintiff or a defendant, but I was involved in a Star Trek fan film case peripherally. That was all about transformative use and things like that. I thought we were in the wrong from the beginning, which we were, but that's just my opinion. In my own opinion, I would say that. But artists' rights and whether something is transformative, fair use is a big deal here on YouTube. What constitutes fair use? There's a lot of rules, and I think people know whether it's fair use or not most of the time. But in the case of this, I ask you, is this original photograph on the left, Lynn Goldsmith's work, and then Warhol's depiction of Prince, which used the photograph, is it transformative enough? Or is it just Lynn's photograph painted over? Well, that's where we're at. And guess what? This went all the way to the Supreme Court. Yes, it did. And I'm going to read you what ended up happening. the Andy Warhol Foundation, who it was ruled in favor at the lower courts. This went all the way to the Supreme Court. Let's delve into what it looked like at the Supreme Court. Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts Incorporated versus Lynn Goldsmith, the photographer. In 2016, petitioner Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts, Inc. licensed to Condé Nast for $10,000. Now, this picture was licensed to Vanity Fair to be in their magazine after Prince's death. $10,000. And this is what pissed off Lynn Goldsmith. $10,000. And this is after Andy Warhol, long gone, 30 years gone. Now his foundation made $10,000 off of this painting. 10 grand, even though this is an old thing, happened a long time ago, 10 grand. Now, how would Lynn feel? How about a little taste? She got nothing. She got nothing. So anyway, back to this is the suit as it was presented to the Supreme Court. An orange silkscreen portrait of the musician Prince, created by pop artist Andy Warhol to appear on the cover of a magazine commemorating Prince. Orange Prince is one of 16 works now known as the Prince series that Warhol derived from a copyrighted photograph taken in 1981 by respondent Lynn Goldsmith, a professional photographer. Goldsmith had been commissioned by Newsweek in '81 to photograph a then up-and-coming musician named Prince Rogers Nelson, after which Newsweek published one of Goldsmith's photos along with an article about Prince. See, this says, I would believe this, that it was published. Years later, Goldsmith granted an artist's license to Vanity Fair for use of one of her Prince photos as an artist reference for an illustration. The terms of the license included that the use would be one time only. Vanity Fair hired Warhol to create the illustration, and Warhol used Goldsmith's photo to create a purple silkscreen portrait of Prince, which appeared with an article about Prince in Vanity Fair's November 1984 issue. The magazine credited Goldsmith for the source photograph and paid her $400. After Prince died in 2016, Vanity Fair's parent company Condé Nast asked AWF about reusing the 1984 Vanity Fair image for a special edition magazine that would commemorate Prince. When Condé Nast learned about the other Prince series images, it opted instead to purchase a license from the Andy Warhol Foundation to publish Orange Prince. So they found out that these all existed. So, and I believe that this, was the first one, not the orange one. But the orange one is the $10,000 question here. When Condé Nast learned about the other Prince series, it opted instead to purchase a license from the Andy Warhol Foundation to publish Orange Prince. Goldsmith did not know about the Prince series, so the photographer didn't know about these until 2016, when she saw an orange Prince on the cover of Condé Nast's magazine. Goldsmith notified the Andy Warhol Foundation of her belief that it had infringed on her copyright. The Andy Warhol Foundation then preemptively sued Goldsmith for a declaratory judgment of non-infringement, or, in the alternative, fair use. Then Lynn Goldsmith counterclaimed for infringement. The district court considered the 4 fair use factors in 17 U.S.C. 107 and granted the Andy Warhol Foundation summary judgment on its defense of fair use. The Court of Appeals reversed, finding that all 4 fair use factors favored Goldsmith. So the Andy Warhol Foundation won. Then the Court of Appeals reversed that finding and found instead that all 4 fair use factors favored Goldsmith. In this court, the sole question presented is whether the first fair use factor, quote, the purpose and character of the use, including whether such use is of a commercial nature or is it for nonprofit educational purposes, weighs in favor of Andy Warhol's Foundation recent commercial licensing to Condé Nast. Held, the purpose and character of the Andy Warhol Foundation's use of Goldsmith's photograph in commercially licensing Orange Prince to Condé Nast does not favor the Andy Warhol Foundation's fair use defense to copyright infringement. The Andy Warhol Foundation contends that the Prince series works are transformative, and that first fair use factor thus weighs in to the Andy Warhol Foundation's favor because the works convey a different meaning or message than the photograph. But the first fair use factor instead focuses on whether an allegedly infringing use has a further purpose or different character, which is a matter of degree, and the degree of difference must be weighed against other considerations like commercialism. Now, I won't read this entire thing, but here's what I find fascinating. So this whole debate, well, one, Lynn's work, the Andy Warhol Foundation was getting paid. She should have had something. I mean, if you've created the basis for something, now you could take this and apply it to anything. The underlying rights to a story, for example. That's why you have to, I always say, it's not what you deserve, it's what you negotiate. Now, why I find this story really interesting, and we're going to find out, how did the Supreme Court rule on this case? So this has gone all the way up to the Supreme Court. At first, the Andy Warhol Foundation was found to have... So here's the real question. In looking at these two images, is the photograph that Lynn Goldsmith took, that's the original photograph, has Andy Warhol in this image transformed the original photograph enough and brought his own zhuzh to it? Has Andy Warhol changed this photograph enough to make it uniquely Andy Warhol? Or is there still too much of Lynn Goldsmith's original photograph in the work? Because if Andy Warhol transformed it enough, then it falls under fair use. Now, this is up for debate. Now, I ask you, my constant viewers, to steal Stephen King's phrase, what do you think? And this is where fair use comes into play. Now, I ask you this. Look at the world we're living in now with AI. AI is scrubbing the internet, and it's changing things around. I think this is going to come into play a lot more, especially when AI is transforming other artists' works and doing mashups and all, interestingly enough. But the real question is, was there actual fair use, and what did the Supreme Court decide to rule? Well, would you like to know? I know you would. So here's what the Supreme Court said. This came down just last week. In a landmark, by the way, this is on artnet.com. In a landmark ruling against the Andy Warhol Foundation, the Supreme Court has sided with photographer Lynn Goldsmith. The court found that Goldsmith was entitled to copyright protection even against famous artists. For months, the art world has waited with... this is by Sarah Casgone, and it was published on May 18th. For months, the art world has waited with bated breath for the Supreme Court to issue a verdict in the closely followed case of the Andy Warhol Foundation for the Visual Arts versus Lynn Goldsmith, and today the justices ruled 7-2 in favor of the photographer, finding that an Andy Warhol portrait violated her copyright for her original photograph of the late musician Prince. Goldsmith's original works, like those of other photographers, are entitled to copyright protection even against famous artists, Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote in the majority opinion. Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Elena Kagan stood alone in their dissent. CNN reported, writing that the ruling will stifle creativity of every sort. It will impede new art and music and literature. It will thwart the expression of new ideas and attainment of new knowledge. It will make our world poorer. Warhol created a series of 14 silkscreen prints and 2 pencil drawings in 1984, each based on an unpublished image Goldsmith took of the young Prince in 1981 on assignment for Newsweek. Condé Nast had paid the photographer $400 for a one-time use of her image as an artist's reference for Warhol's illustration in the article Purple Fame. The lawsuit surrounding the work blew up following Prince's death in 2016 when Vanity Fair published a special commemorative issue in his honor. On the cover, the magazine displayed a second Warhol portrait from the series, titled Orange Prince, paying the late Artists Foundation $10,000 for usage. Goldsmith wasn't paid or credited, but she recognized her work. It was the first time she'd become aware of the pop artist's Prince series, and she was immediately concerned that it violated her copyright. I am thrilled by today's decision and thankful to the Supreme Court for hearing our side of the story. Goldsmith's lawyer, Lisa Schiavo-Blatt of Williams & Connolly, told ArtNet News in an email, "This is a great day for photographers and other artists who make a living licensing their art." The case was something of a David and Goliath battle, with Goldsmith, who actually countersued the foundation for infringement after they sought a declaratory judgment that the portrait was fair use, launching a GoFundMe to cover what she predicted in 2019 to be up to a $2.5 million in legal fees battle. This legal battle has been a long road at great emotional and financial impact upon me and my family, Goldsmith told ArtNet News in an email. I felt I had to risk everything we had financially in order to fight in the courts for protection of my rights and those of all artists against those who would infringe. I hope this SCOTUS ruling is a lesson that people should not shy away from legally standing up for their rights when organizations, foundations, or individuals who have greater financial resources intimidate them with legal costs. But there were many artists and creatives, including conceptual collagist and graphic designer Barbara Kruger, who believed that Warhol's portrait was fair use, and to rule otherwise could have a chilling effect on artistic creativity. On the other hand, the U.S. Copyright Office sided with Goldsmith, submitting an amicus brief to the court, warning that failing to protect her copyright could open up the doors to rampant copying. The ruling appears to have come down to the purpose and character of the two works in question. The court found that both Goldsmith's original photograph and Warhol's portrait serve the same purpose, as magazine illustrations with commercial use. In fact, People had also published a commemorative Prince magazine and had paid Goldsmith $1,000 for her photograph to appear on their cover. The ruling cautions that this interpretation does not mean that all of Warhol's derivative works, nor all uses of them, give rise to the same fair use analysis, but it does tighten the limits of fair use moving forward. We respectfully disagree with the court's ruling that the 2016 licensing of Orange Prince was not protected by fair use doctrine, the Foundation's president, Joel Wachs, told ArtNet News in an email. At the same time, we welcome the court's clarification that its decision is limited to that single licensing and does not question the legality of Andy Warhol's creation of the Prince series in 1984. I think it's a significant contraction of where the court was. New York University law professor Amy Adler, who had contributed to an amicus brief from art law professors in support of the Warhol Foundation, told ArtNet News, I think it's going to significantly limit the amount of borrowing and building on previous works that artists will engage in. The court seems less interested now in the artistic contribution of the second work and much more interested in commercial concerns. Initially, the district court had ruled in the Foundation's favor, declaring that Warhol had transformed Goldsmith's photograph by imbuing it with new meaning as an icon of celebrity. The Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit reversed that decision, insisting that the district judge should not assume the role of art critic. Now the appeal to SCOTUS has decided the matter once and for all. Now, first of all, I fucking love this shit. I mean, I love this because this is the kind of philosophical conundrums that I feel are where we need to be, where humanity needs to be, and we need to consider, yes, it's a photograph of Prince, and yes, it's a transformative work by Andy Warhol. But you know what? These are philosophical, moral, and ethical dilemmas that only we as human beings can experience. The animal world certainly doesn't. This is unique to us, and it defines, I think, who we are as people. And these kinds of decisions are, it might seem frivolous, but we are moral, ethical, and philosophical beings, and I think it's important that we stand for things. Now, I would say this. I think in a certain way, they're both right. I think what Andy Warhol did with this original photograph was in fact transformative. It is uniquely Andy Warhol. He put his own spin on it, meaning it is transformative. However, from the beginning, Lynn Goldsmith's photograph was acknowledged, and even though at first she was only paid $400, she was paid. Andy Warhol knew that he was painting from her photograph, meaning that even though he transformed it, which I believe that he did, it still originated with Lynn Goldsmith, to the point of there was a deal made and money changed hands so Andy Warhol could paint that work. So I would say that that work was definitely transformative. It was Andy Warhol's, but it's forever tied to Lynn Goldsmith's work. In my mind, there you go. That should be the answer. It shouldn't be either or. And I understand in terms of the legal system, that's what they had to decide, either or. What I would say is that in the case of this picture, Lynn Goldsmith deserves a piece of anything moving forward. That's why you don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. She didn't negotiate well. And why would she? Why would she ever think otherwise? She didn't even know that there was a series of those paintings until 2016, even though the original was published in 1984. Why would she know? But the thing is, again, you don't have a contract, you don't negotiate it, you don't have to get paid. This is a whole different thing. $10,000 Condé Nast paid. And if Lynn, she should get, I don't know, whatever she could have negotiated, her agent would have got her maybe 20%, maybe 25%. That way the agent could have taken his fee and the lawyer could have taken their fee, whatever. But still, the deal should have been made. That's what should happen in a fair and just world. And when it comes to things like this, I mean, just wait till our AI world exists and everything is being scraped from previously existing work. I can't even imagine the legal conundrums that the court will face moving forward. But I think that this is a really interesting story. I think it's really interesting to consider. I'd love to know what you guys think. What is it? I mean, let's just, I know that there's a lot of other pressing matters in the world. This is only within our entertainment space. It's only a photograph and artwork. But it has larger implications in terms of who owns what, who deserves what, and how are we going to define ourselves as ethical, moral, and philosophical beings. What is right and wrong? At the micro level, the macro level, whatever. I find this ruling, on one hand, it shouldn't have been either or. But it had to be because that's what was presented to the court. I think that there's some middle ground. And I think that if the Andy Warhol Foundation said, look, you're right, we made $10,000 in 2016. How about we give you $2,000? They should have made the effort. They knew that what they were doing was probably wrong. They knew that that photograph was tied to Andy Warhol's work from the very beginning. So why not do the right thing? You can't because nobody ever will. You must be compelled to do the right thing. That's what our legal system is for. Because who's going to, hey, no one's going to part with cash. But anyway, that was just something I thought was interesting to talk about. And anybody who's involved in the arts might find themselves in that position. One never knows. But I'm curious, what do you all think? I thought it was a really interesting story. Par for the course. There you go. Now, let's see what we have going on here. Let's see what's up with all of you. And because I don't know. I don't know what's going on with all of you. We're going to find out. We got super chats and tips, and I got a few letters to read. So let's take a gander. What's going on with you? 1001 Johnny says, you can't do this to me, Rob. A late night show at 11 p.m. Central Time? Shine on through the night, you crazy diamond. I'll listen to it as Whitenoise. Well, Johnny, that's what I'm here for. A little ASMR to send you to sleep. All right. Johnny, 1001 Johnny. Here's Robert Meyer Burnett, RMB. sending you off to a good night of slumber. Jay Bling says, on Harloffs today, you said you were planning on introducing more original programming. Have you thought of maybe having one for erotic thrillers? Well, Jay Bling, interesting. I am starting up. Next month in June, you're going to see a new panel show on this channel, a daily panel show called The Imagination Connoisseurs. Go figure. That'll be the show. It's going to be pretty exciting, pretty elaborate, pretty interesting, and I can't wait to tell you more about it. But I'm also going to start my 10 and 20s, where they're going to be 20-minute videos where I give you a list of 10 things that you should check out. And Erotic Thrillers is on that list. So, Jay Bling says, I myself am not pitching an Erotic Thrillers program for your channel. I'm just wondering if it crossed your mind. Erotic Thrillers are always crossing my mind. Always. SkeltonStrangeNewWorlds #1 fan. Rob, speaking of copyright, how can AXANAR Studios sell models of Star Trek ships, posters, and a TOS Captain Garth statue without being sued by CBS? They were. They were sued by CBS, and CBS told them they couldn't do that anymore. Alec Peters is flagrantly in violation of the CBS settlement because he knows that CBS is not going to spend the money to come after him again. But they shouldn't, and they can't. And they were told not to. So, Ghost Rider says, this has great implications to my bad experiences as an industry professional. I'd love to talk about it sometime, Rob. I have much to say on this subject. Oh, I'd love to hear it. And it happens a lot. That's why I find it so interesting. And, yeah. But if you do have a story to tell, we should stay in touch. So we should, because I'd love to hear your tales. Tell me what's going on. Narf sent in a tip, a $20 tip. If you want to send a tip, there's a tip link in the description. It's different than a super chat. The channel keeps more of tips because, YouTube, Google, they take like half. But that's fine. But tips, they don't. Narf, I love that, Narf. I miss you, Rob, so much on John Campea's channel. So many changes he's made that even his own John Campea show is now audio only. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Well, he's just making changes that he... Please come back. We need your seasoned movie industry punditry back on his channel. Hashtag wishful thinking. I work with John. I've been working with John since April of 2015. And I know he wanted to make... Here's what I think. I think that, it was the John Campea show, and it was... People have said it was turning into Movie Talk 3.0 or something. I think, what John wanted to do was take back his own channel. And I understand that. I mean, I feel differently about things in the sense that, like, on this channel, I've always wanted a network of like-minded people, other creators making different shows. People like King Tannic doing a show about anime, and of course, shows, all that she's doing with the women of the PGS. Of course, Lana Ewan and her husband Alon doing these incredible reviews of psychotronic cinema, going back and looking into horror and exploitation, and I love the work they do. Is just exemplary. And I'm not saying whether it's true or not, but if I was doing a panel show, I think I would be silly and remiss not to have people like Lana and her husband Alon, who actually directs cinematics for video games. I think they would be perfect candidates to have on a panel show, don't you? Especially because they've been on the show live before, and they're delightful and very intelligent, and they know of what they speak. My friend Sheriff Carl, all the way up in the PNW, the Pacific Northwest, in SEATTLE. Sheriff Carl says that Andy Warhol said himself as some pre-David Lynchian weirdo. Oh, Warhol not said. Andy Warhol sold himself as some pre-David Lynchian weirdo. He was a total hack, but I give him credit because his bullshit were the art. And I mean, isn't that what Paul Williams says? Andy is the art in The Doors. By the way, I fucking love Oliver Stone's The Doors. I mean, I love it. Morrison. It is so Hey, you got a great penis, man. I've seen your movies. You got a great penis. That movie's the best. I don't care what anybody says, and I have it in 4K. I love it. I love Oliver Stone at the Doors. I know he stretches the truth. Strange credulity a bit, but I still love that movie. Love it. And Michael Wincott's in it. And he plays Paul Rothschild, the Doors producer. God bless. You know what? Michael Wincott should be in every movie. I'm just saying. He should. So let me finish what Sheriff Carl said. Warhol sold himself as some pre-David Lynchian weirdo. He was a total hack, but I give him credit because he and his bullshit were the art. I've met all types of con artists living here. I find them insufferable, but he takes the cake as a pop icon. But that's the thing. He was the art. Him and his whole factory, his whole scene, you know, it was incredible, you know, and he lives on even to this day. And God bless him for it. God bless him for it. Royce Freeman sends in a tip and says, live long and prosper. Well, thank you, Royce Freeman. Tom Jr. Jackson gifted a Burnettwork membership. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And our friend Alon Abadi, all the way from Israel, he said he gifted 5 Burnettwork memberships. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I very much appreciate that. So that's cool. That's very nice. Now, I have some letters I would like to read. As you know, you can send me letters if you choose to do so at that www.postgeeksingularity.com. Send me letters, and, you know, if they're inappropriate, I won't read them on the show. I'll certainly enjoy reading them myself, however. But, yeah, so send me letters, and I'll read them, as I will do right now. Let's see what you got. What interesting things do people have for me tonight? This comes from Mike. Mike writes in and says, hey, I love watching your channel. I'm just trying to understand a video I watched, and you stated The Flash was very humorous. Are we talking Shazam humorous? I don't mind humor, but I like a balanced movie with all-around emotions. I don't have a good feeling when I hear it's very funny and humorous after watching 2 great trailers of The Flash and then have the movie be very funny. Does not sit well. Anyway, I hope it's good, and I wish you the best of luck with your channel. And that comes from Mike. Mike, I feel your pain, buddy. Here's the thing. I've said, and I hope this is taken with the spirit it's intended. It's humorous the way that Back to the Future is humorous. Its humor is situational, and it's character based, and it's earned, and it fits with the tone of the movie. The movie gets pretty serious and pretty dark, but it just like Back to the Future becomes dire, you know, the situation, Marty McFly being erased from existence. There's a buoyant, humorous tone to Back to the Future. What I mean is The Flash, like any great movie, it's wildly entertaining. The film does not stop suddenly at the expense of the humor. The humor is derived from the character. And I thought the humor was earned, and it was genuinely funny. It was genuinely funny. The movie opens, the first 10 or 15 minutes of the movie is a gigantic action set piece that has some of the like, oh shit moments that turn into moments of great humor. And it sets the tone. And it really does a great job navigating that tone. I really liked The Flash a lot, and it was one of those movies that it sat with me for a while. And I saw it at CinemaCon. I didn't see it last night, but I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Brian Knight writes in, and the subject is, rest in peace, Rick Dalton. I hope his widow, Francesca, can make it to Hollywood for next year's Oscars to receive an honorary Oscar he richly deserves. At a minimum, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. His contributions to television, movies, and international films need to be recognized. The last of the great Western and action stars. Of course, you all know it was announced on the Video Archives podcast, Roger Avery and Quentin Tarantino's podcast, that Rick Dalton passed away at age 90. I remember growing up when I was a kid, I watched a lot of Bounty Law. And, I loved Rick's Italian films. And I will miss him. And, of course, a lot of people remember that Rick Dalton fried one of the Manson family with a flamethrower. People remember that. And, I mean, I was too young to remember when it actually happened. Of course, everybody grows up and knows how he was able to defeat those evil members of the Manson family. I mean, who knows what would have happened if Rick Dalton wasn't there? Who knows what those people would have done to, like, Polanski or Shannon Tweed or, who knows? I don't know. But, yes, the great Rick Dalton passed away. And Brian Knight, I'm glad that you made us remember him because, I was a fan. You know what, though? It didn't say in his obituary what happened to, he was best friends with his stuntman, Cliff Booth. And it didn't say what happened. Remember, Cliff Booth was that guy, he was that stuntman that people said that he killed his wife? I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I remember reading that or something. I don't know. This one comes from David Miller, our friend David Miller. Is ChatGPT funny? Hi, Rob. I know there's a lot to talk about these days, so I just want to throw this out real quick. In the discussion of what AI can and can't do you think something like ChatGPT could write even a vomit draft of a comedy film? I personally think no. I think comedy is so sublime that anything an AI could produce would just need a one-page rewrite from a room of comedy writers, followed by a pass by a couple of good punch-up writers. In this covetous hellscape, I think comedy for now is safe, though I do have a perverse curiosity to read an AI-created episode of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Frightening. Truly frightening. Mañana, Rob. And that's from David Miller. Again, I don't know if ChatGPT could write a comedy screenplay. I mean, maybe. It would take old jokes. I think that, my favorite comedy is situational and character-based. And in order to be truly funny and insightful, you'd have to have a real understanding of the characters and the situations. And I don't know if ChatGPT or any AI program, without being a lot more sophisticated, could do that. Again, I could be wrong. I'm not sure what the reality of all of that is. But interesting. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But I think you're right. I mean, again, a vomit draft, a first draft, coming up with certain things. ChatGPT can do that, and then you can rewrite it. But I don't know about comedy, man. I think it can only recycle old jokes, and I hope honestly that it can't, because it would kind of bum me out. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know if it could. It'd be interesting to see, though. I'm sure we're going to find out probably sooner rather than later. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. Not sure. I don't know. Let's see what we got here. What is next? Thomas Logan says, Bobby, for anyone on here who doesn't know the incandescent tale of your AXANAR tenure, please run us through what happened and how you dealt with it. Dude, Thomas, I've actually done 2 very long videos. You can watch them on my channel, AXANAR and me or whatever. But anyway, I'll give you the short. So back in 2014, my friend Christian Gossett, who I'd known for years, who has drawn comics and worked on films, great guy. He created a great comic called The Red Star I recommend everyone should read. He came to me and said he had this guy, friend of his named Alec Peters, who I'd never met. I'd vaguely heard that he sold props and things like that. They were going to do a Star Trek fan film that was going to be the precursor for a Star Trek feature film they wanted to make. And, of course, I'd seen all kinds of Star Trek fan films. I mean, Star Trek New Voyages that James Cawley did. A lot of people were building sets. Of course, Star Trek Continues, which is fantastic. But they wanted to do it differently. They were going to do a very serious approach, and they were going to use the HBO documentary Band of Brothers and talk about the outbreak of the 4 Years' War, which came from a Star Trek role-playing game in the 80s. The FASA Star Trek role-playing game. Oh, that's cool. So they asked me, I was actually working on the Star Trek The Next Generation Blu-rays and the Enterprise Blu-rays. And they wanted me to edit it because it was going to be a documentary, a mockumentary. And I said, okay. And so I started working on this documentary. And, I became involved with the project. I did behind the scenes. I was going to edit the documentary. I was given a lot of creative leeway. And it had like Tony Todd, Candyman himself, Richard Hatch, played Karn. You know, you had J.G. Hertzler, who had played Martok in Deep Space Nine. He was playing a Starfleet officer. And it was Kate Vernon, who was one of the 5 Cylons on Battlestar Galactica. She was in it. And it's called Prelude to AXANAR. And I was the post supervisor, the editor, finished the whole thing. And it was a lot of fun. We raised $100,000, and then we used Prelude to AXANAR to raise a lot more money. And it all went to shit after that, but ended up getting sued by Paramount. But I would go back, and there's 2 AXANAR videos I did if you're interested in the whole story. And also, if you want, look up Prelude to AXANAR, but also look up the Vulcan scene. The only scene I was going to direct the feature film. The only scene that I directed was a proof of concept scene where I showed what we could do. We shot this, it's called the AXANAR, the Vulcan scene. We shot that in an afternoon in a parking lot against a 20 foot by 20 foot green screen. Now remember, that was done in 2015, but it still showed what we could do with very little money. Ghostwriter said, I gave you my card, amigo. Shoot me an email. If you don't know who I am yet, you'll figure it out after I start my tale. You'll love my work. Oh, I remember who you are. Indie and Tentpole. Yes, I remember. And I have your card. I'll do that. Evil Emperor Zerg 307 says, hey, man. Been a fan for a while and wanted to say, you are the man. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad you've been watching and enjoy the show. So thanks. That's very nice of you to say. Joe Penora says, hey, R&B, any updates on the strike? As far as I know, there's been no movement. No movement on the strike at all, unfortunately. Which is kind of a bummer, really. Hopefully we'll have more information. Something will happen. But with SAG and the DGA and there's some craziness going on, who knows what's going to happen? I really don't know. Sheriff Carl sends in a tip and says, I bought tickets to The Flash for my best friend's 40th, which is Father's Day, and I'm taking his kids. We saw Batman Returns together with his grandma for his 9th birthday and at the Guild 45th. Wow, that's crazy. It's so nice to have a friend to share multi-generational traditions with. Well, man, I love Batman Returns. I was on the set of Batman Returns on the Warner Brothers lot. That's so cool. At the Guild 45th. The Guild 45th. That's where I saw The Road Warrior with Julie Williams. And she accused me of being gay after not wanting to make out with her. I'm like, we're in The Road Warrior. Who makes out watching The Road Warrior? Don't know. Certainly not me. Sonny Dominguez, speaking of making out, Sonny Dominguez says, I love it when you read articles, as I would never have personally sought out the info you do. What's your process? Coffee in the mornings? Or when you're on the can? When do you seek out your articles? You know, that's an interesting question. Well, first of all, so every morning when I get up, I have this kind of morning routine now that we have puppies. By the way, if anyone's interested, we have 4 puppies left. We have 4 puppies up for adoption. Everyone knows that we have puppies. And if you're interested, here is a family that, this is so adorable. Here's a family that adopted one of our puppies. These are the puppies. They look just like this. And if you notice, the puppy and their 2-year-old daughter's hair is kind of the same. And this is one of our puppies. If you're in the mood for a puppy, I guarantee you these are the greatest puppies in the world. They are F1B Irish Doodles. They are 25% Irish Setter and 75% Standard Poodle. They will grow to be 45 to 50 pounds, probably. We have 3 boys and a girl left. And if you are interested, you can go to Instagram and look under Gilbert _and _ Tallulah. See pictures of the puppies. They are all that color, by the way. They are all this sort of cinnamon brown color. And when the sun is shining, it's much more red. And we've been potty training them, and they have been trained around 3 other big dogs. They're not scared or bashful or in the least. So anyway, if you're interested, find us through Instagram and contact Elizabeth. So there you go. So where was I at here? So that's so cool. So, articles. So how do I find articles? Well, basically, every morning when I get up, that's where I'm at. Now I remember, Sonny, what I was talking about. So now my morning routine is I have to get up, deal with the 4 puppies. I feed the 4 puppies, then I feed our other 3 dogs, and then I make the coffee. And then Elizabeth and I sit outside together, and we enjoy our morning coffee. We're chatting, catching up with what we have to do in the day, and then I usually scroll different sites. I go to aggregate sites, Dark Horizons. I'll go to The Drudge Report. I'll go to the BBC. I'll go to CNN. I'll go to all kinds of different websites. By the way, different political websites from both sides of the aisle. All the entertainment websites, Variety. I'll go to Hollywood Reporter. I read The Ankler, and I read Puck. Those are things I get via email. I'll go to Jeffrey Wells' column. I still love reading Jeffrey Wells. He's in Cannes right now. So I just kind of scan all these things and read whatever's going on in the world and like what is there to talk about today. So I try and keep myself, I read really fast too. So I try and keep myself abreast of things. And then I listen to a lot of NPR. Like I drove to, it took me 2 hours to drive to Christian Harloff's studio. It took me 3.5 hours to get back today. But that was a lot of NPR and talking on the phone and all that. And there was a great article on NPR that talked about this. I was actually going to do this story last night, the Prince story last night. So I had the articles I wanted to read. And once I know that there's a subject that I'm interested in, then I'll go and I'll do a cursory search, a Google search, and see what some of the top articles are. But I like to find articles from like ArtNet. Like I'd never seen ArtNet before. I'll be like, okay. And then I read the article. If the coverage is good, I'm like, okay, this is a good article. And then I'll look around at other articles and sort of fact check ArtNet, because you don't want to read some article that turns out to be bogus. So that's kind of what I do. That's kind of my process. And I do this every day anyway, but I'm always looking for stuff I want to talk about. So that's kind of the thing. Because I just like to know what's going on in the world. And I read all kinds of, and then also the other thing I always forget about is on my iPhone, on the news, the Apple News, I've curated it to give me a bunch of things from a bunch of different magazines. So I find stuff that way too. Joe Penora says, if you need a movie to make out to, I suggest Boogie Nights. It worked for me in the late 90s. The thing is, it's hard. I have never been one to make out in movies with a girl because I'm too interested in the movie. I can't do it. I'll do a home video for sure. And in the 80s, for me, the 2 movies that always worked and got me where I wanted to go, funny enough, was Lost Boys. Girls love Lost Boys. That Billy Wirth does it for you every time. And Two Moon Junction. Zalman King's Two Moon Junction. But those are obvious ploys. So if you're going to use them, you have to use them sparingly. Thomas Logan says, I want to see you and D.Parker discuss the AI invasion. Well, Dave has been talking about coming back on and doing some Midnight Metals, and I think it'd be fun to talk with Dave about AI, especially because we were talking about AI in terms of editorial, which is interesting. So we'll see where that's going to all wind up. I don't know if it's good or not. Probably not. But anyway, so I think that will bring the show to an end, which is great. I'm going to try and do a Robservations every day throughout the rest of the month. And I want to say, oh, by the way, Thomas Bartoli says, He enjoyed me on Christian's show today. I was on Christian Harloff's The Big Thing show with Roxy Stryer. I had great fun. I mean, it was a long schlep for me to drive there, but it was totally worth it. I've always liked Christian. We have always had a good time together. What a great show. He has a great studio that he records from. It's really neat. Really cool venue. I had a great time, and I'd do it anytime. It's just a long way. So, but it was a lot of fun, and it was great seeing him, and it was great seeing Roxy. I've always loved her, too. And I thought we had a lot of fun. Check it out, today's episode of The Big Thing. Really, really good. It was a lot of fun. So, yeah. And, yeah, people have been saying, think while it's still legal. And people have asked, I've got a lot of people asking me, where did I get this shirt? I think I got it on Clown World? Clown World? You know, it's not, I don't always agree with them, but I like this shirt. I got a couple of shirts, and I got a George Orwell shirt, too. So, Clown World? I want to say Clown World? Is that right? Well, you'll know if you go there. And I also want to thank Upper Deck for sending me that print. I thought it was great. And on that note, I want to say thank you to, first of all, my great moderator, Tom Jr. Jackson, he of Goof People. And I don't know I think he's probably the only one here moderating. Thank you for moderating. Sonny Dominguez says, 9.5 weeks is my movie. That helps me get the ladies in the mood. Works every time. 9.5 weeks does. Although some people might find that a little creepy these days. I don't know. Maybe not. But anyway, I want to thank everybody for supporting the channel via Super Chats and Tips. I want to thank John Campea for sponsoring the channel. And I want to thank everybody for, being generous and watching the show. And liking the articles. And on that note, I will say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better night.